Welcome to the online Rica Test preparation course presented by ricatest.com. Thank you so much for joining. In this lesson, you will learn how to write your case study written response. Beginning on the next page includes the directions and student assignments and assessments in order for us to gather information from. Now, remember from the last lesson about making the case study map, the very first thing I would do is make that case study map. It looks like this. Here's the case study map. And although it will take you a few extra moments, it will save you a lot of time while completing your case study because it helps you correctly identify the instructional strategy and the benefit that come from either the student's need or strength. All right, so quickly make that is the first thing that you do when completing your case study response. Now, I'm going to complete this lesson as a think aloud and using modeling where I go through the process of completing this case study just as if I'm a student so that you can really see a good model of how I think out loud to myself and then respond to the passage, the text, and the prompt. So, without further ado, let's begin. All right, here are the directions state first. And remember, we read the directions before we read the prompt so that we know what the expectation of us is to write about. Directions say this case study focuses on a student named Brandy who is 7 years old. Her primary language is English. The documents on the following pages describe Brandy's reading performance at the beginning of second grade. Using these materials, write a response in which you apply your knowledge of reading, assessment, and instruction to analyze this case study. Your response should include three parts. First part, identify three of Brandy's important reading strengths and or needs at this point in the school year, citing evidence from the documents to support your observations. Task number 2 says, describe two specific instructional strategies and or activities designed to foster Brandy's literacy development for the remainder of the school year by addressing the needs and or building on the strengths that you identified. Just to be clear, identified here from step number 1 or task 1. And then task number 3 says, explain how each strategy or activity you describe would promote Brandy's reading proficiency. All right. So, everyone, what I like to do before I move on is I like to paraphrase the directions in my own head so that I really know what I'm going to be looking for. Number one, I need to pick out three of Brandy's reading strengths and or needs. So this might be two strengths and a need. It also might be two needs and a strength, but I need a combination of the two. And then number two, in task 2, I need to pick out two of either the strengths or needs that I identified in task 1 and recommend an instructional strategy that will help develop Brandy's reading. And then in task 3, I need to explain how each of these strategies or activities that I recommend will actually help or aid Brandy's reading proficiency. All right, I think I've got it. Now let's go on to check out the student assessments provided in this case study. All right, first we have a reading survey. The directions up top says printed below are Brandy's responses to a survey of reading habits prepared by her teacher. Okay, so name Brandy. Do you enjoy reading? Sometimes I do. Do you read for fun outside of school? Sometimes I do. Okay. Do you think you're a good reader? Yes, I do. Okay, so confident. Number 4, what is the name of the book you like? Z to the Space Girl. All right. And number 5, how do you find the books you like to read? I ask my friends if they have a new Z to the Space Girl book. Okay, so clearly she's a fan of the series. I'm going to keep going. Okay, next we have an informal reading assessment. It says printed below is an excerpt used for an informal assessment of Brandy's reading performance. For this assessment, Brandy read aloud the beginning of a section from a second grade reader. As Brandy read, the teacher made the following notes about her performance. Okay, so I'm going to quickly kind of scan this. Says, and first I see that there's a key at the bottom. So deletion, insertion, short pause, long pause, repetition, self correction. Okay. And then before I even read, I do want to read the story, but before I do, I'm going to first look for patterns of error. So I see that she made a self correction up top, and then I see that she didn't say the word big, so she deleted that. And then I see a few little pauses that are marked with just like the line down. So like searched, instructions, recall. Okay, so first of all those words, I'm trying to look for other ones, but those words are multisyllabic words, so that's something. All right, now the story says Brett patted his puppy on the head, saying, "Today's the big day, Ernie." Remember, I'm just kind of scanning through this really quickly, but my guess is that this information is going to be used later, so I'm going to read it now. All right, so today you're going to learn how to be a good dog. Ernie gave a happy bark. Okay, so okay, let's get started. Brett said he searched his memory for the instructions he had been reading in a book about dog training. Okay, so dog training. He recalled two important things. One, you have to tell your dog what to do, and two, you have to show your, and then I guess the story keeps going, but that's what the case study gives us. All right. Okay, so from this informal reading assessment, I noticed that Brandy is good at decoding. She only made one self correction and a few pauses. I'm going to go ahead and sort of assume at this point that her fluency rate was quite high. Now I'm going to make a little note to myself on my map to indicate any findings. Now, if you're the type of person who can just remember everything that you think, maybe you don't need to make the notes on your map, but making notes as I go along helps me remember the sort of who, what, when, where, why, how type of idea, in that I'll mark either the strength or the need and then just where it came from. So here would be like the IRA, the informal reading assessment. So here we go. Locating the fluency section on my case study map, I'm going to write STR for strength within fluency of accuracy and rate inside the IRA. So looks like that was solid. So this is good. Unless Brandy's other assessments show me otherwise, I've identified one strength so far. So one down, two more to go. Let's check out the next assessment. All right, so here's the next piece of evidence. After Brandy's oral reading, she recalled the passage silently, and then the teacher asked her some questions. Printed below is a transcript of part of their conversation. The teacher says, "What is Brett's puppy's name?" Okay, so quickly, I notice here that, yes, the questions come from the story that they read from the IRA. So good thing, yeah, read the IRA. And Brandy says, his name is Ernie. All right, next thing, initial thing that comes to my mind is that I understand that this question was a literal comprehension question, and she answered it correctly. So she demonstrates the ability to answer literal comprehension questions. It's probably something I'll take a note of, but I just want to finish this dialogue first. Teacher says, "What was Brett planning to do with Ernie on this day?" And Brandy says, Ernie is Brett's dog. Brett was going to read a book to Ernie. Oh, so this sort of feels important. Um, c so this question was an inferential comprehension checking question, and she was not able to answer it. I wonder what's going to happen in the third question. Let's read on. The teacher asks, "Why do you think Brett needs to read this book?" Uh, Brandy says, "Because Brett likes to read. My mom says she likes when I read, but I've never read to my dog." Oh, no. Okay, so this is definitely major. This has got to be a reading need that I record. This third question was the evaluative question, evaluative comprehension checking question that the teacher asked, and Brandy was again not able to correctly answer it. I'm thinking back to the IRA, and I remember the story as I quickly skimmed it, that Brett had a dog, and Brett had the training book. Like he was trying to remember about the training book. I'm sure he wanted to train his dog. That's kind of what the correct answer Brandy should have said. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, grab my case study map. Now I'm going to locate the comprehension part of the map. And yes, comprehension has two main segments. Remember, narrative texts and informational text. And so I'm going to locate the narrative text because that's what this story is. And I'm going to jot down a note about this now. Here I notice that Brandy demonstrated a lack for inferential and evaluative comprehension while reading a narrative book. So I'll circle it and write the need. Okay, so again, literal comprehension is done well. Inferential and evaluative needs some work. She did, however, show that she can answer the literal question. So give her a check mark there. Okay. Now, before I move on, I want to take a moment before I feel like there could be a connection between this, her lack of understanding with the inferential and evaluative comprehension question, and what I read on Brandy's student survey, where she circled that she sometimes enjoys reading and that she doesn't often read for fun. It's a bit of an assumption, but it could be because she's not inferring much meaning. Maybe that's why she doesn't, read a whole bunch or you really enjoy it. All of this is something I probably want to write my response later. But okay, so I'm going to move on to the next evidence and just kind of tuck that one away for right now. All right, so it looks here like we have the teacher's notes. Let's go ahead and read this. It says, printed below is an excerpt from the teacher's notes documenting informal observations related to Brandy's reading activities. All right, so 10:3, the teacher wrote, during independent reading, Brandy fidgeted in her chair. She kept moving her book around and peering around the room. She didn't distract others, but wasn't focused on reading her book. I'm making a mental note here that this actually does connect with her reading survey. Let's keep reading. So 10:16, the note says, today I assessed Brandy's oral reading fluency level by using a passage from our science textbook. Brandy's accuracy was 98% and rate was 67 word count per minute. Okay, so this is another evidence or another piece of evidence indicating Brandy's fluency ability. When it comes to accuracy and rate, um, yeah, her accuracy is good, right? And again, as I assumed, the fluency was pretty solid from the IRA. It looks like it is, so I should jot that down. So both the IRA and the teacher's notes showed accuracy and rate are strengths of Brandy's. So just make a note here because I'm going to want to provide the evidence of my opinion in my written response when I get to it. Her error count was low, but I noticed that. She needed to pause to decode several high frequency irregular words and a number of low frequency multisyllabic words. Um, okay, so again, keep that in mind. And then 10:29. Today I had scheduled meeting with Brandy's parents. We talked about at home reading. They actually didn't say much. I couldn't get them talking about specifics. They only mentioned how busy they are and how much they appreciate the work she brings home from school. The mother did mention that she makes sure each night to ask Brandy if she completed all of her homework. Okay. 11:04. Brandy is about 2 weeks behind in our comparative animal research project. I need to have a conference with her and help her make a plan to find another research book and finish her outline draft by the end of the week. Again, this kind of correlates to her kind of like lack of motivation for reading. But all right. And then at the very bottom, it says, note here, WCPM is words count per minute. So let's keep going. Now let's read the written response. It looks like Brandy wrote from a text. So right at the top, it says students in Brandy's class keep reading logs to document the books they read during independent reading. For each entry, the teacher provides a general question or prompt for the students to respond to. Printed below is an excerpt from Brandy's reading log. The assignment was as follows: write a short summary of the book you read by identifying 3 characteristics about the main character. Okay, and then the response is as follows: my book was Zeta the Space Girl, of course. Okay, I have read all of the books in this series so far. She seems pretty motivated on that book, though. Um, there is also a video game called Zeta. Okay, here we go. That you can play online. The game is just like the books. Zeta is the main character. Her best friend named Joseph is captured by aliens, and Zeta goes to help him. There are a lot of aliens that have different colors and look different too. Okay. They all live on a different planet. Got it. Okay, so interesting here that Brandy once again read a Zeta book. I noticed that she did answer the question about who the main character is, but she left out the characteristics, which is part of the task that she was supposed to complete. I feel like in this case, it's not that she couldn't tell the characters, especially because my guess is that she probably knows a lot about the characters, being that she reads the books and plays the video game, but she just didn't include it. I'm going to keep this again in the back of my mind. I don't think it's really noteworthy yet. And I'm going to move forward with the next student piece of evidence or assessment. All right. So here it looks like we have a conversation between Brandy and her teacher where what she wrote in her reading log. Oh, okay. So about what she wrote in her reading log. Got it. Um, this is good. I wanted to read this because Brandy's reading response felt a little bit half made. So let's see what she says. All right. So the dialogue says, teacher, what made you choose this book? Brandy says, Because I love Zeta, I really like playing the video game too. I also have the Zeta lunchbox. Okay. My mom said that I can get a Zeta t-shirt. Okay, so she's a big fan. Teacher, would you recommend this to your friends? Brandy, well, I would ask them if they like video games with adventure. And if they said yes, I would tell them they should read the book. Okay. Teacher, is there anything in the book that isn't in the video game? Brandy said, well, maybe a little bit. When Zeta gets the magic stone at the garage sale. But basically, it's just like the game. All the characters are the same too. Zeta is so brave all the time, and Joseph is always getting into trouble. I like Zeta the Space Girl because I always know what the next series is going to be because of the video game. Okay, so maybe even the video game like precedes the book. All right. Um okay. Let's move to the next piece of evidence and keep going. Here I see this is an informal skill assessment on multiple meaning words. Okay. And it looks like the students needed to write sentences using the different meanings of these words. And as I'm looking at Brandy's responses, I see that she was able to complete the sentences for the word pen, but only one sentence for ring and star. Again, when I see something incomplete on the case study, it's probably a connection that you're supposed to try and find. So I'm going to try and find a connection between what this might be. First, it helps me to define that this is a vocabulary checking assessment in writing. All right, so here we have Brandy's general vocabulary knowledge. It seems like her vocabulary needs to be increased, and a contributing factor would probably be stemming from her minimal enjoyment in reading, which is leading to a limited vocabulary set. So I'm going to pause here, jot that down because it seems like an important connection. Now I've got my case study map. I'm going to find the vocabulary section. And I'm looking at this, now I can remember that within vocabulary includes academic language, background knowledge, and vocabulary itself. Now, this is narrative text, and we're not talking about academic language, but we are talking about vocabulary. And perhaps if she would focus more during her independent reading, that would improve her vocabulary and her background knowledge. And that stuff would increase. So that could be important. I'm going to circle vocabulary and make a note for multi-meaning words. Um, okay, I'm going to pause here because I have my combination of strengths and needs to complete task number one. I also see here that there are no more pieces of student evidence, so it really is time to take a second and draw out my map before I just go ahead and write my response. Again, doing this takes an extra minute, but it saves so much time, and it really gives you a clear map to follow. So if I look back, here are all of the notes that I've made so far. So far, we have fluency, which is a strength. We have vocabulary, which is a need. And we have comprehension, specifically inferential and evaluative, which is also a need. Now let's use the map to connect the dots. I see here that I have one strength and two needs, and I'm making a model for how to answer the case study prompt. I will use all three of these to complete task one, but I will only select two needs to offer an instructional strategy and discuss the benefits of in order to complete task two and three. So just one more time, task one is where you identify three strengths or needs. Task two and three, you take only two of the strength or the need, and then you identify the instructional strategy and benefit of it from those two needs. So my plan here is to teach Brandy how to use a story grammar outline along with rereading when text feels confusing as she reads stories, because um, this is a visual strategy, and I believe it will enhance her comprehension, which I feel will support her inferential and evaluative comprehension needs. So if you look on the map, I've already circled narrative comprehension is a need. And if we just go to the right and then go one more to the right, it just provides you with the answer. So like I said, like if you can memorize how to fill this map out, it will just save you so much time. All right. Now for the next need, this is going to be the one in regards to vocabulary. I'm going to color code this one in yellow just to kind of clearly differentiate the difference here. My plan is to identify Brandy's need. My plan to identify Brandy's need in vocabularies by using contextual redefinition. Again, it's already stated right on the map. This is great. Which This teaches students vocabulary using context clues and also facilitates cooperative learning, which was, of course, in the vocabulary lesson in this online course. All right. So now for the most important section, let's put this all together in a clearly and concisely written case study response using the 5-step framework that was laid out in the case study introduction lesson. If you haven't watched that already, make sure you do. So let's begin. All right. Now, one more time, a quick look back at the directions tells me I need to begin my response by identifying the 3 strengths or needs and to cite the evidence that supports these claims. All right. So that's what I have to do. Now, feeling nervous about taking your Rica test? Click the link in the description below. Get full access to this Rica test prep course and start feeling prepared for test day.